Okay, so for number 17 is a domain and range question. We have gone over domain and range a couple of different times because if you think back, remember we took an extra day when the guys went to basketball playoffs. We had a short day, so I explained it all over again. So the last time we saw domain and range, though, we had a part where, and it's on page 109, it should be on page 109, half of the notes or part of those notes had tables. And we wrote that for any table, the domain will always be all real numbers. For any table, this also includes equations. That also includes equations. So when we did that redo assignment, let me go back. If you look at it, you have tables, table there, table there, table there. But once again, even though you were given that second opportunity to do a redo assignment, most of you didn't do it anyway. Now, there is a big difference between these two tables and the table that's in the test review. What is it? You should have your test review in front of you. So give me a second. Where are you going? So what's the difference? Look at it, compare it. Look at the tables. What is a difference that you notice? Not the decimals, not the negatives. That one? No, either one. What's up? What I wanted you guys to notice is that this table has titles. This table has titles. And think about, this is something to think about. When your table has titles, it represents certain things. If it's a table where you just have X and F of X, it doesn't really represent anything. It's just a table with numbers. It's just a graph. But when you add titles to that table, it creates a whole new scenario. Here, now we're talking about a golf ball, okay? We're talking about a golf ball now. The values aren't actually going to make sense, but still. Think about this, distance. If your X values represent distance, can you have a negative amount of distance? No. You cannot. Can you have a negative amount of height? Because your Y values represent height. No, you cannot. Now we have had problems, or we have had examples. I'm trying to click this. We have had examples where they are real world scenarios where we're talking about height, we're talking about time, we're talking about height, time. So with these types of examples, notice you have endpoints on your parabola. You don't have arrows because you cannot go a negative amount of time. You cannot have a negative amount of distance, a negative amount of height. So that is something that you need to keep in mind whenever you have a table with titles. And if you get a table with titles, it's not automatically all real numbers. So you're going to treat this as the beginning of the parabola and the end of the parabola. You will treat the first point as the beginning, the last point as the end. Typically we don't, because once again, they're just numbers. These are just numbers until you add a title to them. These here, they're just numbers. There's no title, there's no scenario for it, just numbers. But here you actually have a scenario. So we're going to treat both of those as endpoints. Okay, we're going to treat them both as closed circles. Now, the part that I did teach you how to do is finding the vertex. Who found the vertex and what is the vertex? $1.75, 150. This is my turning point. This is where my parabola goes. If it goes from 4 to 175, we're going down. In other notes, we would do it, point by point. But after the 175, your parabola starts to go up. So we're describing a parabola that goes down and then back up. But we have endpoints on both sides. Now that turning point is 1.5 and then 1.75. The first point, the beginning of this parabola is where? At what? It's at 0, 4. The beginning of this parabola is at 0, 4. The ending of this parabola is at 2, 2. So to find the domain and the range, we typically do what? We label our endpoints, our x, y, as x and y values. Always x, y, not y, x. Has to be in alphabetical order as always, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and find the domain and the range, not just the range like the question asked. That way you guys are prepared for both scenarios. All right, so domain is your X values. So we're looking at just the X values. You always write your domain and range from minimum to maximum. That's in your notes. I don't have to repeat it all day long. What is the lowest or what is your minimum value? 0, 150, or 2? 0. $0 is less than 150. What is your highest X value? 0, 150, or 2? 2. Okay. Now let's look at the range. Range are your Y values. What is your lowest Y value? 4, 175, or 2? 175. What is your highest Y value? 4, 175, or 2? 4. Minimum to maximum, minimum to maximum. Now, in the past, when we did domain and range, the reason I had to bring this up is because this is another possibility that could happen on the STAR test. I told you guys it was all real numbers. So typically you would have all real numbers for your domain, and one of the sides here was going to be all real numbers. Was going to be infinity. That's the type of answer, or that's the type of answer choice you would pick if you had an infinity. If you had an infinity and only one number, but notice you have numbers on both sides, 0 to 2, 175 to 4. And so in that case, your sentence is actually going to be written this way, where this one says it's going from 0 to 175, 0 to 150. Now, this is my typo, so you should have had 175 here and a 4 here. This one was on me. But if you have numbers on both sides, your sentence will be written in this form. All real numbers greater than, they're bigger than 175, but less than 4. Bigger than 175, less than 4, meaning it has to be in between. Numbers bigger than 175, numbers less than 4, okay? So if you have numbers on both sides, this is what your sentence will look like. If you have an infinity on one side, meaning there's no title on the graph, or there's no title on the table, then your answer will look like this, okay? All right, moving back to number 13. I told you guys that you should have narrowed number 13 down to 2 answers. What 2 answers did you eliminate automatically? Correct. The last 2. Should have automatically eliminated the last 2. Why did you eliminate the last 2 and not the first 2? What did you notice about the last 2? What do you know about the last 2? The negative 16 represents the y-intercept, but the y-intercept on this graph is what? Negative 8. Now, so that matches up with the first 2 answer choices. I don't actually teach you how to figure out, unless it has a dotted line, I don't actually teach you how to figure out if it's a 1/2 or if it doesn't have anything. But yesterday we learned something that is a useful tool in helping you determine whether it's A or B, whether it's the first or second answer. You can always create your own table. You can always create your own table. So we know that the y-intercept is 0, negative 8, or it is it crosses at negative 8, so the ordered pair should be 0, negative 8. I need a few more points to add to my table. What else can I add to my table? Give me the ordered pairs. Negative 4, 0. And what else? 2, negative 6. And 4, 0. Make sure you write the X value first, then the Y value. 5, 4? 5, 4, it's close, but not it. I would actually use a -2, -6. No, I mean, you could use upper half, but I don't think that that's actually a point where it crosses. So, all right, now I have a table. I have a table, even though I don't know if it's getting narrow or wide. What can I do with that table? Put it into stat edit. Put it into stat edit. So go ahead and put your points in. Stat edit 0, 2, 4, negative. What's up? Nah. What matters is that the numbers are paired up with the correct one. So 0 needs to be next to -8. -4 needs to be next to a 0, not -6. -6, 0. All right. After you get done putting your points in, what's next? Stat, calculate. And what do we do in this screen?
Go to store reg.
And what do we do in store? Alpha, trace, enter, enter, enter. And there's the values, or there are the numbers for this parabola. So I can write this function as f of x equals 0.5 x squared plus 0x minus 8. 0.5 x squared plus 0x minus 8. Not there yet. 0.5 x squared plus 0x minus 8. We talked about this yesterday. We discussed this yesterday. Would you actually keep the 0x in your final answer? No, that I just use that as a placeholder, but 0.5 is also what? 1/2. So your answer is A. Even though you don't know if it's getting narrow or wide, you should be able to find some ordered pairs and match it up to it. They do not always provide a dotted line, okay? And the last one was number 10. Number 10, that's the one that you should have been able to do as of yesterday. Does anybody already have that answer? That a yes? You got B? All right. 1, 2. Does this one go all the way to 35? Is that what it was? 3, 2, 4, 16. 30. So you get, I got something wrong. I did wrong. All right, so you get -4.89, which rounds to -4.9, 294.96, 295.57.6. So yes, B is the correct answer on that. Now, the second part that I want you to go ahead and write this, what is f of 45? What is f of 7? Anytime you see f of anything, it resembles what? F of x, f of x. This is something that we had actually seen in the very first 6 weeks. I'm going back over it just because technically we should know how to do this. Technically, we should know how to do this. We learned how to do this again yesterday in a different form. But then it's also going to be on the test as well. So here we go. Notice that the 45 is in the same spot as X. 7 is also in the same spot as X. Yesterday, you were asked in question form, in sentence form, if given the time of 23 seconds, what is the height? This is asking the same thing in a different manner. If the X value is 45, what is the Y value? The 45 is in the same spot as my X, so 45 represents an X value. So we have to look for the Y value. What can I do? What trick can I use to take me directly to that 45? Second window, type in a 45, something that we already learned how to do yesterday, and there's your answer. It's just asked in a different manner. 3353.3. So if I give you an X value of 7, what would the Y value be? It would be what? 1,825.3. And this is a Y value. The 7 is seconds. Y value, the height, is 1,825.3 meters. Okay. All right. So those are all the ones I was actually going to cover. I'll start calling you guys one by one. In the meantime,